events has a bonus. We will have a keynote address. But before I present the speaker, I will give the floor to Leandro Dessa for a few words. He is the co-president of our chapter. Leandro?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Nick, for this introduction. As Nick was expressing, the European American Chamber of Commerce is co-organizing this event. We are actually a 60-year-old institution. It now has different subsidiaries, if you want to call them this way, in Paris, New York, Amsterdam, here, Southwest France, Lyon, Cincinnati, the Carolinas, different places in the US, in Europe. The purpose of this institution, of this Chamber of Commerce, is to promote and support business and trade between the US and Europe. And in our case, obviously, with a specific focus to Southwest France. We cover in our chapter from anything from Bordeaux to Montpellier, Toulouse, Perpignan, and Bayonne, if you will. That triangle is our playground, if you will. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Leandro. I present to you Xavier Titelman, our keynote speaker. His topic is the future opportunities and innovations, electric vertical takeoff and landing, delivery, drones, and electric commuters. Xavier is a former air navigator in the French Navy and an expert on aviation security. He founded Aviation NXT, a consultancy for commercial airlines, with an emphasis on reducing the carbon footprint, innovation, market studies, and strategy. He founded the Centre de Traitement de la Peur de l'Avion, Center for Fear of Flying, and co-wrote the book, Je n'ai pas peur de l'avion, I am not scared of flying. He has given many talks at conferences and appears often on the news. One might even say he's an influencer. You can check out his YouTube channel where he shares his passion and adventures in aviation, along with some great analysis. Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you, Nicolas, for this introduction. I'd be sorry because my YouTube channel is in French, so usually I speak French. I will do my best to be understood by you today. Thank you very much. So we will deal about the future of aviation, how it will change in the next few years and decades. And one of the first steps I would like to talk about the sustainability and the pathway to sustainability is that the COVID crisis, the current crisis, just accelerated this move. For example, all the big planes, the massive planes, the Queen of the Sky, the Boeing 747, the A380, all those planes disappeared from the sky, which means that in average, the fuel consumption per passenger might improve in the next few years. But up to that, we will add a few tips just to make it faster. And so I will share you my screen as a start. We're going to see together, this is what I do in the airlines and in the airports, how we can improve fuel consumption and, of course, CO2 emissions. The first one is to improve electric taxiing. You know that you can put some kind of an engine in the wheel of a plane, but you can also have some kind of huge tugs, electrical tugs. Currently, there are some trials in Germany, basically, and they are just trying to see how much fuel you can save, and it's about 4% reduction of the fuel consumption thanks to electrical taxiing. Okay, the next one is about the improvement of the infrastructures on the ground. You know that, for example, if a plane is at its parking, to have some electricity and air conditioning, he has to use its own APU. The power unit, it produces electricity thanks to fuel. Instead of that, it can use the fixed electrical ground power provided by the airport. And of course, it can use the air conditioning by the airport, and it's much more efficient. And all those improvements, thanks to the infrastructure, could be about 3 to 4% reduction in the fuel consumption in the world. I also give you an example about the system-based navigation. Just to give you an example, if a plane fly in the turbulences, it has to adapt its situation. It will fly slower, maybe it will change its altitude, but since it cannot predict the turbulences, it does it at the very last moment. When it is in the turbulences, it changes its speed very fast at the last moment. But if a plane suffers turbulences, thanks to satellite-based communication, it could inform the next plane that it will have some turbulences, and so the plane below can be able to change its altitude more progressively and reduce its fuel consumption. Another way of improving and massively the efficiency could be to rely on the big data. Two examples here. For example, you can adapt the thrust. Thanks to big data, you collect the temperature, the humidity, the air pressure, the wind, the length of the runway, for example. And thanks to that, the computer will tell you, okay, instead of putting 95% of thrust, just put 93% of thrust, and adapt your speed and the angle of your climbing. And according to, for example, Transavia in France, this very specific opportunity saves 80 kilograms of fuel per takeoff for 737 NG. So it's really efficient. Another way is to improve the cleaning of the engine. Thanks to predictive maintenance, they can know, because of course, if your plane goes to Morocco, to the desert, if it goes to Sweden, it won't be used, it won't be dusty the same way. And of course, you need to clean your engine faster if it has been more fun in Morocco, for example. And thanks to predictive maintenance, you can adapt and clean it just in time, just the right time, and save fuel. And it's about 6% if you add the eco-piloting. For example, there's a startup called Open Airlines. They're very efficient, and they help the airlines to improve the eco-piloting habits. After that, we can have the weight reduction. You have lots of examples, but one I like is a Japanese airline that said, okay, if each passenger was 100 grams lighter, for example, if he was going to the toilets before to board the aircraft, on the world, 100 grams lighter per passenger would mean 50,000 tons of fuel saved every year. So of course, everybody should go to the toilets, but this is an example. But for the airlines, you can change the seats, you can use lightweight cabin equipments. We can replace the flight bag, which is about 10 to 15 kilograms of paper. You can use the in-flight, some kind of an iPad, and all the same information, because when you save 100 kilograms in a plane, you save 3.5 kilograms of fuel per hour. So we expect between 3 and 4% of reduction of the fuel consumption thanks to lightweight cabin equipment and all those modifications. And of course, you have the ATM. You know that the plane don't fly straight, unfortunately. Basically, they could, but they're supposed to fly on airways, and airways are situated between 2 points, which basically are the airports. So you lose time. On the European soil, we lose about 6% in time flight because we can't go straight, and we don't have shortcuts, for example. And we could save 6% by flying straight. We could save another 3 to 4% just thanks to progressive and continuous climb and descent. and of course reducing the time we spend. For example, if you go to London on the Friday evening, you might have to wait for half an hour turning in the sky for it's your turn to land. All that could save 10% fuel for Europe, thanks to, for example, the CESAR program. And we had the opportunity just now on the North Atlantic flights, because there are fewer flights. Britain and Canada tried to improve the flights, and they managed to save as much as 14% of fuel consumption for the transatlantic flight thanks to this optimization. So we have to digitalize the sky, we have to improve it, we have to have the 4-dimension ATC, traffic management. So lots of work on this position also. Another big transformation that we're expecting is about the predictive maintenance. I gave you an example for the cleaning of the engine, but of course we can save lots of time and money just by reducing the delays. And here is an example from Air France with a prognosis system. They managed to find, for example, there are 3 types of maintenance. The first one is not the good one because you wait that there's a failure and you change the piece for a new one. So it's too late. You have the proactive maintenance, which is before, for example, you know that your fuel pump is it's supposed to leave 200 flights. So after 180 flights, you will change it. But maybe it's too early because it could be used maybe 20 to 50 more flights. And thanks to predictive maintenance, for example, in the A380, they managed to, thanks to vibration, thanks to lots of information coming from electricity, etc., they managed to see 10 to 20 days before the fuel pump could be broken. And so this is predictive maintenance, and it's, of course, the most efficient one. Another example, to identify a failure, instead of spending 6 hours, it took 5 minutes. And for complex failures, instead of needing 50 hours of human working, it took only 2 hours of analysis. So of course, it's much more efficient. And we're expecting about $26 billion of savings thanks to predictive maintenance in the next few years. So it's a huge market. It's estimated AI in aviation and big data in aviation is approximately $600 million last year, because of course 2020 was not a good year, but I kept the number for 2019. So on a 80 billion market for maintenance, it's only 600 million now, but it's supposed to reach about 5 billion in the next 10 years. So it's of course going to have a huge growth. So this was for the improvement of the current fleet. Okay, my second part is about the future and the dream of the future. We are going to see lots of very exciting improvements in the next few years. The first one could be this year, if they are not delayed because of the COVID crisis, but in 2021, you have an airline called Harbour Air in Canada. This company, this airline, will fly all planes retrofitted to be electrical. So, for example, here they have DHC2 and DHC4 and 6, the picture in the middle of your screen. They will provide commercial flights by the end of the year. And they're supposed to provide 300 flights per day, fully electric. Next year, in 2022, you begin to have some dedicated aircraft just made and designed for electric. And for example, this one that you can see here, it's very beautiful. It will be able to reach 1,000 kilometers and 500 miles, something like that, and for 9 people, so it's big. In 2023, we will begin to have lots of UAVs. Why do I say lots? Because this year, in 2021, Ehang should begin in China to offer commercial lines. In 2022, it will be Singapore and Dubai. In 2023, it will be Los Angeles, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Sydney, lots of cities. In 2024, it will be Paris. Of course, it won't be massive in the beginning, but when the time will come, it will be something really exciting. In 2023 also, we will have 20-seaters aircraft, but it won't be fully electric, it will be hybrid electric. And it's very efficient. We'll explain it a bit further. And in 2025, maybe it's supposed to happen, in 2025, fully electric 20-seaters. There's something very exciting that we saw last summer. It's Elon Musk. Okay, Elon Musk, you can love or hate him, but he said that the electrical density of the batteries, the one that we need to be able to fly planes, we are 2 years in advance. Instead of being in 2025, it could be 2023. So instead of taking more time, it's about to accelerate. So this is good news. Let's talk about the electric commuter. Just for the world, the commuters are the plane below 20 seats. So it's the plane from 4 to 19 seats. Why it is great? The first reason is because they are beautiful. Look at them. I love those planes. Here, this one here, it has flown already. They have measured 59% decrease in the drag. Okay, so it reduces the drags. All the new aircraft, all those small aircraft, they can improvise, they can innovate really, really fast, much faster than Airbus and Boeing. But there's lots of improvement and lots of innovation that we can see in those aircraft that will be massive in the main big aircraft in the next 10 to 15 years. Why is it exciting? The first reason is because it will reduce the cost, the operating cost, by 60%, because of course fuel is the most expensive part of an airplane and electricity is much cheaper, and also the maintenance is cheaper, which means that those aircraft will be in competition with low cost, for example, low cost airlines or legacies, but they will be able to offer some direct route instead of passing through a hub. Here you have a study that was made in Germany, and this study just show you in light blue you have all the airports that exist in Germany. Here you have the lines that already exist in Germany, okay, and here is what could be feasible and what could be economically viable in Germany. So of course, thanks to 90-seaters, the average mission would be 435 kilometers and 65 days daily flights. So it's really amazing because it will offer the opportunity to save time, save money, and go even further in the small cities and connect the small cities together. There's a pathway in Europe that says that 90% of the transfer door to door in Europe, it means from Toulouse to the countryside of Bulgaria, 90% of those transfer should be feasible below 4 hours. It means that we will need this kind of system just to reach the goal that we had thanks to the European Commission. To be more specific, in the next 5 years, of course, you have the training aircraft. The first one, this one, was authorized to fly in Europe last year. As I said, it will be bigger and bigger. From 2025 and 2030, we should reach 70 passenger aircraft. I forgot something. I forgot to tell you about the hybrid systems. Okay, because you have the fully electric with batteries, and you have some systems that are hybrid electrics. It means that, for example, for takeoff, which is the most where you need the more power, it would rely on the batteries, because the planes are not really efficient on takeoff, because the engine are 100%. But when you are on cruise, you can use an internal generator, which could rely on usual fuel, but it will turn at the most efficient rate just to produce electricity. So the propulsion could be electric, but the generation of the electricity could come from the fuel instead of coming from batteries. And it's a very efficient way of working, because of course the batteries are too heavy right now, and you can have a wider range, cheaper operations thanks to that. And we think it could be below 40 grams of CO2 per passenger per kilometers. So it's about below 1 liter of fuel per passenger for 100 kilometers. So it's really a big improvement. After that, between 2030 and 2035, some very exciting programs. For example, here I show you a picture about the Wright Electric with EasyJet. They are supposed to provide 180-seater fully electric plane for 800 kilometers. So of course, it's still short ranges, but you have to remember that about half of the world line, of the world directions, are below 1,000 kilometers, and none of the current planes are efficient for below 1,000 kilometers. So where the current planes are the least efficient, we have the solution, the electrical solution that will come very fast. So for example, this one is supposed to reach 800 kilometers. You are in Toulouse. It will be that from Toulouse to London, from Toulouse to Frankfurt, to Paris, to Nice, to Spain, for example. After that, after 2035, we will have the hydrogen. You know that Europe, and France in particularly, spent a lot of money, decided to invest lots of money for those new kind of aircraft, and Airbus will provide a fully hydrogen aircraft in 2035. So of course, it's amazingly exciting, because those planes won't emit CO2. You have another thing, you have another way of working, it's to produce sustainable aviation fuel. Because for long-range aircraft, we don't have a solution right now, and we don't expect to have a solution between 2040, maybe 2045. And aviation decided to use sustainable fuel, and it's a big difference between sustainable fuel and the fuel that are used, the biofuel that are used for cars, because planes don't want to be in concurrence with food, nor with ecology, with the nature. So sustainable fuel won't use any palm oil, for example, and it won't use corn or sugar, for example, because this is in concurrence with food. So this is a massive improvement, and we will have those three ways of traveling: electrical, hydrogen, and sustainable aviation fuel. So the future is bright on this side. What's up with the electrical vertical takeoff landing and what we call the UAM? As you can see, it's beautiful, and you have multiple architecture for those UAM. I'm working on this kind of topics, and it's moving, it's improving incredibly fast, really. Last year, some people were believing in it. I mean, it was a few $1 billion, which is a lot. But now, since the beginning of the year, I think more money has been spent in the last 3 months than in the last past year. So it's amazing. The first step is what I told you earlier. We will just try. We will just validate the concept. We will offer, for example, if we look at what will be done in Paris in 2024, we will go from Disneyland to Paris Airport, Charles de Gaulle. So it will be direct lines, straight, with a pilot on board. So there is something very simple to organize and to manage in the air traffic, for the air traffic management. At the same time, we will see the explosion in number of the delivery drones. Some study expect that the delivery drone could reach up to $40 billion of value as a service in 2024. Okay, it's between 20 billion and 40 billion regarding on the studies. It's just the beginning of something incredible, because aviation and this kind of aviation help reduce the CO2 emission of the whole industry. You won't need Deliveroo. You won't need Amazon with the dirty big car. You will have an electric system just dropping your gift in your garden. Something very simple and very efficient. Between 2020, oh, sorry, forgot something. I could have said it already exists, and the most exciting example we have is in Africa. In Rwanda, you see the Zeppelin system. It's working for now 6 years, and they are providing medical supply for the remote hospitals. Instead of using your car, it takes 4 hours. You have to have a fridge that doesn't work just to bring the blood to the hospital. Just use the drone and it will deliver it. It's very simple, it's improving. And those countries, they don't have our rules. So it's much simpler to go fast, for example, in Africa. And you have lots of very exciting examples in Africa. They created their own drones, they use it on their own, and now they are going to work in other countries around because it's cheaper and it's more efficient. So between 2025 and 2030, the eVTOL should be bigger, up to 9 seats. And there are some studies that say that 60,000 pilots of UAVs should be needed by 2028. So of course, it's something we can't even know now how many people will work in this sector, but it's something, it will change the way we are living in the cities. Because up to 2030, things should change for good. I mean, maybe those vehicles could be autonomous with no pilot. So of course, the pilots will have to find a way to work another way. Maybe something remote, how to work with those systems, how to develop them. And we expect about 15,000 UAVs to be in service in 2035. And at this point, it will go from the top of a building just to cross the river. If you look, for example, at the Vancouver is in advanced, and they are just studying those opportunities because they are looking, okay, if we follow the demography, we know we will have 100,000 of new inhabitants in the area of Vancouver in the next decade. It will be, so they know that there will be a massive increase in the demography, and they need to build new bridges, new highways. And instead of that, they say, we will invest in UAM. We will invest in drones, in taxi drones. It will be cheaper, it will be more efficient, and we don't have to spoil and create infrastructure that emits CO2 right now. So we don't move, we wait, and we will invest in all this kind of mobility. Okay, this is what we call urban air mobility, because with one ticket, maybe you will have an autonomous car that will bring you to the vertiport, that will bring you to your very own house, and it will be much, much simpler than what we have today. And the cost should be, by the end of the decade, in 2030, we expect that it should be less expensive than a current Uber for this kind of ride. Just to finish with the opportunity, as you can see, I divided the market by the different kind of mobility. Here in orange at the top of the screen, it's about 15,000 aircraft that will have to be delivered in 2035. Here you have the commuters, about 10,000. Here you have the current generation of commuters, which is disappearing, of course. In light green, you have the current fleet of aircraft, the previous aircraft, A330, Boeing 777, etc. And in dark green, you have the new aircraft, the 777X, the 787, the A350, all those Neo and MAX aircraft that will improve fuel efficiency by at least 20%. But as I told you before, changing plane can improve your fuel efficiency by 20%, but the operational optimization will add another 20%. Okay, and to that you will add this electricity, this hydrogen, and the sustainable fuel. So let's be clear, there's lots of opportunities in the aircraft, and people should not just focus on the airlines and the current industry, because this is just one piece of the market, and it will really grow much faster in the next few years. Thank you, and I saw that there were some questions. I will stop sharing my screen.
Perhaps we will keep the questions for the end. I'm sorry, but I want to keep a tight ship on this. So thank you. That was fascinating, and it sounds very promising. It was nice to see all this new technology in one presentation. Thank you for the explanations. I feel 100 grams lighter. But anyway, Xavier will be will join our panel. So please come back. I will ask all the panel members to turn on your video, please. Once again, the panel is about aerospace's recovery, a discussion on strategic value chains, and the path forward. On our panel is Murali Varadarajan. Murali is the former Senior Vice President of Operations at the Mumbai International Airport with over 18 years of experience in airport planning and development, corporate strategy, and airport operations. He was responsible for integrated terminal operations of T2 and T1 and their corporate aviation terminal. He has been an invited speaker at many international aviation forums, most recently one being the ACI, Asia Pacific Virtual Roundtable on Airport Perspectives amidst the pandemic, where he showcased the works undertaken by the Mumbai Airport to bring back passenger confidence for safe and secure travel. His article on contactless travel, the new norm of aviation, was recently published in the International Airports Review, May of 2020. And we are lucky to have him because he is currently on a sabbatical pursuing an advanced master's in airport management at ENAC, which is the French Civil Aviation University located in Toulouse, France. We also have Jean-Charles Buguière. Jean-Charles has 16 years of experience in either buying or selling in complex environments. Today he's the sales director for leasing markets at ATR in Bagnac, France. He was also the systems and equipment manager. Previously at Airbus, he worked as the engine procurement manager. He graduated from the Toulouse Business School, Grande École in 2004. He also earned an MBA at the University of Cincinnati, Ohio in the US. And I have to point out his interest, turboprop. Okay. Last but not least is our moderator. I have the honor of introducing Dr. Christophe Benarroya. He is a professor of marketing at TBS Business School. He's currently in charge of TBS's Aerospace and Mobility Center of Excellence and has been heading the Aerospace MBA for the last over 5 years. His work and teaching focuses on B2B and aerospace marketing with the publication of numerous books and articles. One of his books, the title is Aerospace Marketing Management. Christophe holds a PhD in management, focused on marketing from the University Jean Moulin III. He has a history of working in various industries internationally, from marketing to education. Is Xavier going to come back on? I hope. Christophe, the panel is all yours.
Thank you so much, Nick, for the introduction. And thank you all for organizing this webinar. Actually, this panel discussion is clearly about ways to rejuvenate and re-energize the aerospace sector from various angles. Xavier already has described some of very promising activities. Indeed, just consider that what happened in a few months, the aeronautics sector, which was till last year considered as one of the most vigorous and promising sector, with a solid order backlog, prospects for continued growth in air traffic, suddenly become one of the sector most affected by the pandemic. So the shock has been violent for this sector, creating as well some new opportunities, as it has already been described. And I think specifically for a sector that used to live in the illusion of, a perennial market, too big to fail. We're the leader, we know how to manage the market for years. So suddenly things have changed, and the crisis that has been obviously impossible to anticipate in its extent, in its scope, and very unprecedented in many respects, has nevertheless revealed on one hand, probably we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, a certain number of deficiencies. I'm thinking of the supply chain and the way the various stakeholders were organized, and on the other hand, challenges to be met to ensure the future of this very strategic and critical sector for simply human activities. So hence, the current painting is not full black. There is a silver lining, even though all stakeholders have been impacted, but in very variable manner, depending on the geographical areas and the nature of the activities. You've seen recently, again, I think yesterday or today, it has been released that the cargo market came back to normal in terms of traffic for various reasons, but the defense is as well booming, and there are a lot of opportunities as well in business aviation. So we'll discuss about that, and it's in order to discuss about these challenges and perspectives, it's my great pleasure to welcome our eminent guest, Xavier Murali and Jean-Charles. And maybe to start the discussion, my first question goes to you, Xavier. Well, let's just to have a very French first approach. What do you think of the initiatives taken by the French and European government to help the aerospace industry? What measures have been taken, and what do you think about that? If you can share your views about this.
I think we are lucky. To be honest, when I look at my friends in North America, in Canada, there were no help. In Tunisia, in Algeria, it's really complicated. So Europe, and specifically France, was massively saved. So we saved jobs. About 200,000 jobs were saved thanks to the current decisions. And not only the jobs, but also the perspective. If we were waiting, maybe in a couple of years, we were below the Chinese, for example, with COMAC. And thanks to those new programs that will accelerate, the government just accelerates the command of military aircraft, for example. So it helps all the value chain from the suppliers up to Airbus and Dassault and of course all the big what you can see everywhere. So we were lucky because most of the airlines managed to save most of their employees Okay, it's too hard, maybe 20% decrease in Air France and all the other airlines, but if we look abroad, it's really worse. And those very impressive programs will create value. If you look at, for example, Volta Aero, it's amazingly exciting. If you look, for example, at the hydrogen, of course, it's working. If you look at Alice Aviation, okay, it's an Israeli company, but it's working with the French team. And I think that today, aerospace is the last industry in which France is at the top level, and we should keep having those very high level thanks to this helps.
Yeah, thank you for your answer, Xavier. Actually, you're right. There have been a lot of initiatives. There were already existing initiatives and big program like ORAC in Europe, helping, of course, the industry. But now it has been accelerated, speeding up because of this situation. And we see as well, because you discussed, and we cannot cover everything, but we see a lot of niche market as well. Airship, for instance, the former balloons, for instance, or you have light aircraft. So there is a lot of things going on these days here in Toulouse with Franck Lazial. There are a lot of initiatives in the southwest as well between Nouvelle-Aquitaine and Occitanie. There is this project of Mael that they to encourage framing the supply chain and all the ecosystem. So yeah, it's very interesting to see that we want to keep not only the jobs, because that's very short term, it's as well the talent, and maybe there is a shift to some new activities to embrace the new challenges. Speaking of which, Jean-Charles, what about, I mean, out of all the projects that we were discussing, are there some of them that you are watching carefully? We've seen, for instance, the utmost growing importance of the cargo activities. Can you maybe elaborate a bit about this?
Yes, thank you. I can certainly elaborate about this. Indeed, at ATR, we've developed a new 72-600 freighter version, thanks to FedEx, which has just bought 50 units of 30 plus 20 options of this new bird, and we concur that with the different lockdowns and the complexity of traveling those days, being capable of for an OEM of delivering cargo aircraft, well, it is protecting somehow the supply chain and our deliveries, our yearly deliveries. Well, studies show that e-commerce has boomed because of this crisis, and has maybe this has sped up the history of this segment of the market by 5 years. So we are today seeing levels of trading that we would have seen 5 years from today. So yeah, you're showing my ATR resilience slides.
Yeah, I made some promotion for ATR in the meantime. Okay. So yeah, maybe you want to discuss maybe the resilience of ATR, and maybe talking about the what you're doing. So I can, if you want, I can.
Yeah, exactly. So on the turboprop, I'll try to, all attendees, I'll try to do it like very straight to the point, 5 minute tops. I have 4 slides, and just to show you that, the turboprop segment, the regional segment, is important by its capability to shift network and adapt. Very simply, you can see that 10 years ago, we had 1,300 routes being flown by our aircraft. Today, roughly 2,000. And those 2,000 routes being flown today by ATRs are, well, for 2/3 of them are new routes, either created. So we do help players, operators with a tool creation. We are assessing the markets and adapt every year where the demand is, and we capture routes from other equipments. And our platform, as you can understand and as you may know, is well efficient. We are consuming 40% less fuel than over competition, regional jet competition. So that's our motto. That's our angle when selling aircraft, is that we are today the sustainable solution. Of course, we fly at a lower pace, but we do consume 40% less, and this results on average to 4,000 tons of CO2 being saved every year when you fly an ATR versus a regional jet, the competing regional jets 80 packs. Next slide, please. So our second, after being capable of, as I've shown, adapt to our market, the other thing is that our market is resilient by nature because we ensure domestic flights, necessary flights, and we ensure essential services flights. As you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, 40% of our operations are there to serve territories that are not served by other platforms that you need a boat to go to. It's mostly what we call PSO routes, public service obligation, taken by the European Union, taken by the Indian, for instance, government today, that is really trying to develop some parts of India that were to be developed, and because aviation, as everybody I'm sure will concur, is a way to boost economic growth, to connect people, to ensure peace, to ensure stability. It's something that will continue. And of course, there are alternate solutions to fly, as we've seen before with Xavier. But today's solutions are efficient and are serving territories where trains or smaller platforms cannot go. And this will remain even in the period to come, and maybe remain with ATR. Maybe next slide, please.
Maybe we can maybe stop right now in the frame of your presentation, because it can lead us to something very similar. I mean, we're talking about the recovery or ways for recovery, and the aviation traffic is expected to, depending on the sources, of course, to get back on pre-COVID levels. Of course, the shares will be different, as Xavier said. Probably we won't fly exactly the same aircraft. We won't fly exactly in the same way, but still, in terms of numbers, we might expect something very similar by 2024, as most of the experts are saying. And so, what are what might be the recovery plans as well from another perspective? So we can talk about the airlines, the aircraft manufacturers like you, and we'll talk again with you. But maybe it's worth to listen to Morelli about what might be the perspective from the airport side. So I stop sharing for a moment your presentation, Jean-Charles, and we get back to it afterwards, right?
Yeah, Christophe. I think the aviation, in terms of traffic, has gone through not really a damaging phase, a decimated phase last year in terms of 60% of traffic completely wiped out, and with respect to, I'm also sharing a few screens. Is much easier to explain to the audience in that sense. Are you able to see it? So in terms of, if you see the aero and non-aero revenues, which contribute to 60 to 70% of aero and 30 to 40% of non-aero revenues, the airports really need to think very differently. I mean, they're being forced to think differently today. If you see, the traffic has gone down by 60%, revenues have really plummeted. So there are various statistics which says in different regions, if you see Europe, it's gone 65%, and North America at 60%, and so on. So coming with the way of what the CEOs in the boardrooms and brainstorming panels would always come up with a different plan, or financial engineering. You can go about reducing your cost. or deferring your moratoriums and repayments and negotiating with the governments for longer concession periods or deferring the concession fee. So all this financial engineering, of course, has always been on the cards, and people have been doing firefighting and due diligence, and a lot of M&As have been happening, and leaderships have been changing. But one kind of thread which I wanted to show was something to do with related to aerospace in terms of how this whole industry and the aviation airport industry would tie together in terms of value chain. It is something to kind of reuse of these aircraft as an alternate source, like which is also gaining momentum this year. If you look at it, almost 65% of the cargo is coming through belly, and that's also been affected because of COVID. But a lot of market studies and statistics says that this year all these aircrafts are going to be, moved into a cargo fleet, and a lot of cargo would be carried. Although cargo constitutes almost 10% of the total revenue, but still, a drop in the ocean is worth to have the liquidity for the airports and airlines till we actually achieve the pre-COVID levels. Like as you say, the rating agencies say 18-month game plan. The industry says 48-month game plan. But yeah, we need to survive during this particular plan.
Okay.
So I thought this could be one of the short-term measures which could keep us afloat in the short run.
Excellent. Thank you. And Xavier, do you see some possible changes on the market? Because we mentioned earlier that there are some changes regarding the fleet, but as well in terms of players, do you think that there will be, in terms of recovery, what might be the impact among the airlines?
Basically, there are three kinds of passengers. If I look for Europe, but it's basically the same all over the world. The first one are the professional. And they are, of course, the most valuable passengers since they use more the business class. And there's a huge fear in the airlines because those passengers could disappear between 6 and 10% after the crisis. And they might use fewer planes in the next few years because of the remote way of working, because electric signing of documents, for example. And in the next 10 years, so it could be 6 to 10% drop right now, but up to 20% drop by the end of the decades regarding what we were expecting before. And it's huge because, when airlines buy planes, they buy planes for some time in 7 years. So of course they were expecting to have those passengers, the first one. The second one is what we call the visit friend and relative. And of course, when you have a family abroad, you have to visit them. Whatever the situation, the economical crisis is, as soon as we won't have any restrictions, those people will come back and will fly again and will go, for example, in Algeria and travel abroad just to see their family because they are working in another country of their family. So they will come back. About 1/4 of the European passengers are the VFR. They will get back in 2021 or very fast. The last one are the tourists. And for example, well, it depends on the areas, of course, but basically in Europe, in North America also, they will save money and they will reduce the spends that they have on leisure. And of course, the most compressible one are the holidays, with another gap between short haul and long haul. Yeah. Usually it takes 2 more years to recover for the long haul passengers. So if we look at the past, if we look at the 2008 crisis, we had to wait up to 2014 to go back on the 2007 level. It took 7 years to recover. This time, the economical crisis seems to be worse, and we have all those limitations due to the virus. So it could take as much as 7 to 8 years to recover on 2019 level for Europe and North America. But of course, it will be much faster. We see then Asia, for example, 2021, 2022, it could be back on track. So the world average is about 2024, but there is a huge gap. And all the suppliers, Airbus, ATR, Boeing, are related to the world average, not to a very specific area. So it's very good for ATR because you will have opportunities before Air France, Lufthansa, and American Airlines, for example.
Oh yeah, and maybe we can expect as well some changes in the business models from some of the legacy carriers. Maybe they will take some initiatives to cope with the market. As you do my job, Xavier, because it's the perfect transition to come back to you, Jean-Charles, regarding the opportunities in the post-COVID. So I display. Come back to your slide. Hope you get it.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Because it's exactly about this, right? From the aircraft manufacturer perspective, it would be interesting to talk about what might be the let's say the opportunities.
Well, Xavier really introduced properly the topic. We see ourselves the short haul domestic as being the first to rebound because it's the essential connectivity, as we said. Our platform is very sober and represents a lower risk, of course, for new players, for startups to start operations. Basically, as I said, the aircraft is right-sized from 40 to 70 packs, and of course, some routes that used to be flown by bigger platform might now be flown by ATRs. Especially when people are accepting to fly again a little bit slower, but with all the positive impact it has on the planet, on the sustainability of the operations, as we've said, with a very versatile aircraft that can fly wherever. It's very good avionics, capable of flying onto unequipped terrain. Airfields, on gravel, on narrow runways, capable of sustaining Wolf program operations. I mean, you name it, very robust and still high-tech aircraft thanks to the avionics. With the new opportunities as well provided by the governments, I've said to be the PSO schemes that are really helping what we do. Currently in India, where, for instance, Indigo is a fast grower, taking aircraft to serve the new routes being granted by governments. Same in France. Over France, we have Regour that has taken over the ex-Air France operations now from, for instance, Aurillac to Paris, from Agen to Paris. So the French government is getting more and more sensitive to of course, to these new constraints of the new world. The e-commerce, I've said, with small freighter, we have perfect aircraft as ATR because it's an ovoid cross-section. It's not a round cross-section like the Q400, for instance. And it's very well designed because our aircraft, when you buy a brand new aircraft, you already have a cargo door at the front of the aircraft. So that when the aircraft is 10, 15 years old, you don't have to modify the airframe to have a cargo door at the forefront of the ATR, and you can convert the aircraft into a bulk freighter at virtually no cost or very, very limited cost. So it's a future-proof somehow aircraft, which is very useful for me as a sales guy to the leasing market because it encourages the residual value of the aircraft. It's liquidity on the market. You have, of course, plenty of operators that will be looking for this second-hand aircraft for transitioning. So it's a well-thought bird. Maybe I'm a bit partial because I work with ATR, but I'm very admirative on some of the choices that were made back in the early 80s that today have an impact on our sales and on our capability to weather this storm. And last but not least, to conclude on this slide, we see new airline business models. People are wanting to do point-to-point and ready to pay for increased service, to have less crowded aircraft and less crowded airports, and are ready to pay for premium for that. So we can imagine that in the future we will have ATRs while flying over some routes like in a premium mode with two abreast configurations and a new config to satisfy these new flyers that do want to fly into bigger platforms.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually everything will depend on the issues or the end of, let's say, hopefully the end of this COVID situation, and hence the consequences in terms of passenger behavior, right? So one of the key questions we all have, and Xavier already mentioned, who might be the main behavior, the way the market is segmented in terms of passengers, but the real issue is about what can we do to get the passengers back into the aircraft. There are a lot to say about this, starting with what the authorities can do and hopefully align their decisions and try to be more coordinated, because it was one of the critical aspects. Of course, it was a nightmare, sometimes really impossible to understand anything about this. But well, we can do anything on that here, but maybe it would be great to hear about what could be done, according to you, Morelli, to try to create some confidence in the passengers. So would you agree to say a few words about this?
Yeah, sure. I think you put it right. And it's bringing back confidence of passengers is, I think, the most important part of what airports and airlines together are doing in whatever way. I'm just sharing my screens as to look at how the main touch points and pain points which passengers go through today. If you look at it from a perspective of passenger arriving from check-in points to passport control to security and retail, and before he boards the flight and on the arrival, if you see with respect to immigration and control, customs. So this whole system, if you've seen, I think I'm sure everybody in this room has traveled, all has got touch points. Now, the point which has happened before, during COVID and now, they are actually afraid to get through these points in a normal way. So, passenger has got, a lot of, what do you call it as, they are not confident to get into this. So so this is where the opportunity lies for a lot of aerospace companies, and a lot of investment is done on digitization. And airports need to invest on these to keep abreast and bring back those passengers. As you know, like the majority of aero revenue comes from aero and non-aero mix comes from passenger to travel. I mean, airports can't survive just by running cargos on a long-term basis. So if you really see what we could do is that, and what people don't want, like what Jean was saying about confined spaces, they don't want to be in confined spaces anymore, brushing people anymore. They don't want longer lines, and they don't want any kind of close interaction with people. So I like this chart, which always present in many of the forums, which in terms of digitization. Like if you see, for example, you can do offline check-in, which is anyway a norm here, which we are doing it. The added advantage, what we should do is getting into this health pass being integrated into check-in, as and when the online actually happens. And a lot of companies are pouring a lot of money into this because, as you also know, that the EU leaders met last week. They also stressed on the fact that the COVID test, RT-PCR, should be digitized, and they should carry digitized certificate. So this is one important point which can be done offline before we get into the airport. The other one is about remote check-in of bags. Where you can have no interference with people, and this can be done even at metro points, which you see at the bottom or dedicated check-in areas, which can, the airlines or ground handlers can collect and take it to the airport. Obviously, I'm not looking into the fact that it's going to cost, it's going to be operating costs going to be high. That's a different discussion we could always have in the long term. And moving on to now health checks, which are happening with temperature screening. I remember when we were getting those the Vande Bharat flights, which used to come from San Francisco, and a lot of chaos was happening in the airport in Bombay, and we started doing this. And some said, you do the temperature check. Some said, how does it, help? And I'm sure all the passengers who trial was temperature check, but, still COVID was there and it came into the country. So, and moving on, this can be kind of integrated with your biometric. This can be checked at the e-kiosk. You can do that check instead of people standing and doing it. It can be in different modes. Different airports have different infrastructure. I'm not saying that everybody has to, suddenly jump in and pump in money for all these activities, but they can do it in stages. But eventually, you have to be there. And of course, the SBDs, the cell backdrop, which can happen. So all this, as you see, as a process, are still touchless and doesn't require any human interference in that sense. To the sharing of data, like for the health pass integrated with the border control, the health authorities, both at the point of origination and both at the point of destination. That could kind of ease in this confusion people are having. Like suddenly you land up in a country and say, you've got to quarantine yourself for 7 days. Sorry, you can't do it, even with COVID negative tests. So these kind of confusions, which are happening and which is bound to happen for next couple of quarters till the vaccination is completely through, and how we are going to integrate this vaccination into the part of this, again, the health pass is also going to be a key challenge, because for business travelers, that's going to be a very important aspect to look at it. And also coming back to the point of, moving into retail strategy in the airports, which is going to be touchless. Touchless ordering and, in terms of retail and F&B. And boarding gates at the point are going to be points of checks on their own, with the health pass and boarding pass. So the technology and this revolution is catching up. It's caught up in many parts of, I would say Europe and France, and it's catching up in Southeast Asia and India kind of thing. But you see, there is no human interference in any of these process points, or minimal interference, I would say, in any of these process points. So ideally, passengers need to move from these confined long lines and closed interactive spaces to a more self-styled, seamless, and a contactless kind of an approach. This approach by airports and airlines would bring in that confidence, would bring in those passengers sooner than what is forecasted. Like, for example, this entire biometric thing can be integrated in all your phases of this pain points. It's going to reduce the kind of, the pricks which they're going to face. And also with respect to virtual queuing, the virtual queuing app is catching up very fast nowadays, and of course back in India and many parts of the world, because that will kind of get passengers to kind of use these checkpoints in a more intelligent way, and kind of done through the IoTs and AI. And as you see, the entire future, what we are going to look at, maybe in 5 years, 10 years time, it's going to be biometric, contactless, and seamless. And it's a great opportunity. The airlines, you see, like the lesser the congestion, the faster the boarding, lesser the congestion. And all these services are integrated through your Face ID. And there's no escape to that. And in addition to this, the aerospace, this market is basically, it's going to boom, and it's going to be like an $18 billion kind of market in 2026. And I'm sure a lot of these aerospace companies are investing in this technology, and it will continue to grow, and it'll be it's going to be the future, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. The good news in what you're saying is that beyond, of course, there is a health concern. The starting point is this, but actually, thanks to digitalization of a lot of things that were already there partly, or developed or implemented in some places, On one hand, we go back to one of the basic needs of the passenger, which is saving time and having a seamless process. We have all experienced only for 1 hour or even 15 minutes flight. It takes 3 hours in total, just because of all of these painful checks and processes that are of no value for the consumers, and even I doubt it's a real value even for the players operating these tasks. So that's very interesting, because if we connect now the dots of what we said previously, I think that, you know, I remember, and all of us have experienced that one of the revealing elements of the crisis has been the reactivation of the interest and efforts of regarding the environmental issues. Why? Just because we have in mind these, you know, empty streets, empty skies, with the beneficent silence and the singing of the birds, and you know, the return of other sounds of nature and so on, and the clarity of the sky. And somehow it's maybe unconscious, but suddenly people consider that, well, we should do something for the environment, maybe with a lot of emotions, a lot of poetry as well. But anyway, and I think for some reasons, it has stigmatized the air and rather spared, I would say, the other modes of transport. You know, the trucks, the buses, the cars that are by far much more polluting than the on average and worldwide than the aircraft per se. But my point is, maybe instead of being the useful idiot as we all are in this industry, maybe what has been said by Xavier and yourself right now, it's that maybe we can connect and better you know, interconnect the various transportation modes to enhance the passenger experience, and to maybe cut some of these roadblocks and pain points that we are all experiencing in traveling. And I think that if we step back, what we are saying here is that probably based on technology on one hand, based on the services as well on the other hand, well, we can probably ease the whole experience while maybe hopefully reducing the environmental impact. And I think you have some views as well, Morelli, about the circular economy applied to this sector. Maybe it's connected to what I'm guessing or imagining here.
Yeah, I think so, Christophe. I think we are thoroughly spoiled in the last year because of COVID. In one way, like we're getting clean air, fresh water, and all that. I think we're not got used to it. But just to come back to what you're saying, I mean, it's a circularity or circularity, I would call it, in terms of circular economy. And I was just thinking about Einstein's theory of E is equal to mc square, where to develop a balanced ecosystem E, you need that momentum to kind of bend that linear kind of economy into this circular economy, which is going to actually be the future. I mean, that's going to be the future business model if you look at it, right from different stages of transportation. I mean, if you have a guaranteed passenger is guaranteed that right from the point he leaves the house till he boards the aircraft and reaches the destination. And it's going to be, he's going to come on, you know, like, as you say, electric transportation, whether it's bus or car, and he's going to be guided by the AI or the IoTs, which are going to tell you that, you know, where you will be at what given point of time. The biggest advantage is the more he saves time, the more he spends at the airport also, right? And that's going to reduce these pain points which are going to come. And not only that, airports, like what Xavier was talking about in terms of electric taxiing, is one kind of circular economy that could bring in. MRO has got its own, right from design, manufacturing, production, and recycling. You know, last month, India has seen one of the first, you know, recycling which has happened in the, you know, the 777s were done in record time. That industry is going to grow eventually. And as you rightly say, that emissions, like, of course, everybody knows about the Paris Climate Protocol, thing which all countries have signed. So zero emissions to UNDP Sustainable Development by 2050. All this would be like, it's a kind of a, it's kind of a network which can work interrelated. If we all tie these ends together, if you really look at it from that perspective, like for example, airlines and airports have banned single-use plastics. They have gone in for usage of 100% reuse of waste, converting into useful biobricks or bioblocks and all that. Germany has been pioneering in many of these sectors, and India is also catching up in these areas. So I would say that each stakeholders in this value chain, if they could, kind of add value by reducing emissions and waste and provide a circular economy, I mean, that's going to be a sustainable, chain link, which is going to happen in the future, no doubt about it.
Yeah, even if this is a marketing guy who is saying this, it's even a little bit thought-provoking, but we all know that consumers and passengers are buying more when they have a lot of anxiety. So maybe we'll have to find out some ways to create some anxiety in the airport. No, I'm joking. Xavier, I know that it's one of your, let's say, topic that you like to discuss as well, because to demystifying ideas regarding this industry, would you be kind to elaborate a little bit more about the the pollution and the impact on the environment and all the I mean, it's a real question that we should not deny the question, but so yeah, we'll be pleased to listen to you on this.
My pleasure. So to be clear, just two numbers. The emissions of the aviation represent 2% of the greenhouse gas in the world, 2%. Because of the other contrails, it represents 3.5% right now. But if you look in 100 years, only those 2% will be there, okay? So those 2% allow us to provide about 70 million jobs and more than 4% of the GDP in the world. So the perspective is important. But because of Greenpeace, etc., they don't rely on science, they rely on a political agenda. And you have heard 5%, 6%, 7%. This is fake news, as we say now. The reality is between 2% for the CO2 emission, 3.5% for the global warming now. But because of all those fake news, about the half of the population thinks that aviation is responsible for more than 10% of the greenhouse. And if you look at scientists, there's something I like, for example, it's called the drawdown review. The drawdown review has reviewed all the industries and what we can do to improve and to respect the the Paris engagement. Yeah. And aviation is on the 39th position in the list of what we can do to improve the fuel efficiency. For example, reduce fuel waste, reduce food waste is on the top of the list. Improve fridge and cold management, for example. Even improve the way of producing bamboos in China could reduce more the greenhouse than improving and reducing the aviation. So of course we will have to work, but everybody focus on the 39th industry on the list instead of everybody should do it. We will do it, but the other ones don't. So I think it will be hard, but we have to say it and repeat it. Go and tell to everybody aviation is 2% of the greenhouse gas and 4% of the GDP. And we have committed, we will commit and divide by 3 the CO2 emissions by 2050. Thanks to all we've seen before and thanks to the new generation of planes coming. So 3 times more passenger and 3 times less CO2 emissions. So it's huge, but we will do it because we are working on it.
Jean-Charles, you want to add something? I know that it's as well one of your topic at ATR.
No, I cannot say better than I've just heard. I'm drinking your words for literal translation from French. Well, of course, a lot can be done with today's technology as well. I think it's been said earlier by Xavier as well, but well, when you fly with a combination of biofuel utilization, height optimization, distance speed optimization, center of gravity optimization, shorter cruise optimization, you can already cut another 40% up to, with ATR, we had what we've called a perfect flight in Sweden. And we managed by implementing all what I've said to reduce by 46%, the fuel consumption versus a classic flight. So, well, we have existing technologies. I would even advocate to remain, cool on all this electric stuff because, well, we need to see the full life cycle of these electric solutions. What about the lithium? Where will you find the lithium? How will you produce the electricity to charge the lithium battery onto the aircraft? How will you recycle the lithium battery afterwards? So people tend to only see the flight and the zero emission flight, but you need to see the full picture. Today, unfortunately, a battery is very heavy, and we need to do really breakthrough to make it happen because the battery keeps its same weight from point A to point B, so it's not super efficient in terms of weight, and weight in aviation is the enemy since climat more than 100 years ago. So we really need, and I know there are some efforts being made to have a European battery and stuff, but I think the topics are much more complex if you look at the full picture than just saying that electricity or hydrogen is a solution. If you talk about hydrogen as well, it's how will you move around hydrogen, especially in remote remote airports. It's the full supply chain that will need to be reinvented. So there is no easy answer, obviously, and we must see the full picture.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would be a complex answer to a complex question, actually. So there would be various, as Xavier mentioned, there are various initiatives, various technologies that would be combined partly, depending on the use case somehow, depending on the reason why we're flying, where we're flying for, and so we'll have a combination of solution. And of course, our brain, the human brain, loves to have, a very simple answer. It must be A or B, but probably it will be a lot of combinations between the A and B. I'm sorry because I see that we are almost running out of time, and still there are some questions that were not addressed. I mean, there are many other questions. I know I've seen that there are some questions about leasing, there are questions about MRO, there are many things to talk about, but I see here in the audience, there have been some questions, so I don't know who might answer in very short manner to this question. The first one, back almost 1 hour ago, it was from Iriam, and he said, how far can the commuters go?
I think this is for me. The first one, the retrofit commuters, is about 200 kilometers, so it's really small, but it's very good to go from one island to the other one, or to, for example, it's good in Canada, as I told you about Harbour Air. But the next ones, about 1,000 kilometers. By 2025, we should focus on 1,000 kilometers, maybe more after that, but because of the limitation of the battery.
Okay, that kind of range. Okay, thank you so much. And Laurent Bertrand-Diaz is with us, and he asked a question about, I think it's again for you, Xavier, about the fuel cell technology. Do we really need to wait for 2035, or is it not already a technology for the commuters?
No, the fuel cell is about to be developed right now. But the hydrogen is not available on lots of airports. So maybe the limit for that is that you have to stay on airports with hydrogen. So fuel cell should be available. You also have some hydroplanes, or how do you call it?
Water plane. Water planes.
The water plane with hydrogen fuel cell. So it's available. It will be quite quickly available, but hydrogen is not. So this is the limitation. But technically, it's ready. And then there's another one. I think it's for me also for the A350 Neo version.
Go ahead.
It's from the beginning. Because of course there probably will be A350 Neo version, but less than 10% of the current fleet is from the last generation of aircraft. So first, just focus on producing all those engines that we need just to improve it. Maybe in 10 years there will be a new Neo version for the A350, but there's no hurry. The first difficulty is just to provide as many engines and remain with security and all that we need just to provide them.
Okay, some questions for you, Murali. Maybe you're able to see some of them. There is a question about the equipment of the airport, if they are already, let's say, equipped or fitting with the new or future needs regarding electric or hydrogen aircraft.
I know. I think I'd be taking the first question before Jory had mentioned about, can you share a bit about willingness about travelers to India to adopt biometric? Yeah, I think, Jory, the most important thing is to target business class passengers. I know there is a lot of resistance in adopting the biometric solutions in India. DigiYatra, as you know, has been started 2 years back, but it's not scaled up. But I think to give you a quick answer, start with the business travelers. I think you'll get there. Ruma on the airports equipped, I would say that it's still early days, it's always a tough task to store hydrogen at that cool temperature. Electric, I think we should get there. That should be the one which should be faster than hydrogen, I would say. Cedric has talked about how to deal with passengers' need for reassurance between check-in security, humanless terminal, how to deal with the passenger needs. Well, I think in my presentation, I was quite clear in terms of how we should move to less human contact kind of an approach by adopting a lot of technologies, of course, in variant stages. I think I could share the presentation to him so that, if he has missed it, he could, catch up on that.
Okay, I'm very sorry because we cannot cover all the things, and I know that we should probably stop our discussion. Maybe it's very encouraging to organize maybe another session because there's still a lot of pending question. But I would like to first of all thank you all for your answers, Jean-Charles, Xavier, and yourself, Murali. And I think that owing to all the fantastic perspectives and projects, we should keep in mind what Amelia Earhart said. The most effective way to do it is to do it, right? So I leave the floor to you now, Nick, for the concluding address. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an impressive panel. Thank you, Murali, Jean-Charles, and Xavier for sharing your insight on what is taking place and what we can expect. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this, it's up top, all the speakers' opinions are their own and do not constitute their organization's standpoint in any way whatsoever. Christophe, you've done a tremendous job as a moderator, and you're really engaging. I also look forward to future events with the Aerospace community. Today's event was put together in a record time through the efforts of the TBS's A&D group, spearheaded by Emma Balakrishnan. That being said, we appreciate the audience for spending Wednesday night with us. This event was recorded, so we will share it on YouTube, and we will also send you by email highlights of the event in the document. So good night, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.